Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Life Coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Thursday, July the 5th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And once again, just want to reiterate what I said this morning. I hope you had a great 4th of July. I know lots of celebrating was happening around the country, and sometimes people forget what they're celebrating. But, you know, hey, it's all about the hot dogs anyway, right? So that's the way I look at it.
Okay, Walt, I was looking at it for the freedom.
So I hope you had a good 4th. We kind of took the afternoon off, so I hope you kicked back or got out or did something really fun.
Yeah, what for me was really fun was I did absolutely nothing.
Oh, well, that can be fun. Yeah.
It felt great. You know, I mean, the truth is, of course, I did some stuff, but, you know, nothing noteworthy, and it was just fun to just kind of be with myself, and I enjoyed that.
Very good. All right. Yeah, lots of different ways to enjoy the 4th, I have to say. Around here, we did get out. We actually went out to have some ice cream at our favorite ice cream place. But we were outside just long enough to go from the car into the ice cream place and then back into the car and turn the AC back on.
Yeah. It is really hot right now.
Yeah, it was one of those days. But we get a reprieve tomorrow. We get back to the kind of weather I like, where your temps are in your 70s to low 80s and not humid but drier and so forth. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a good day weather-wise. And we got the weekend coming up because we actually don't. We have some towns that do fireworks on the 4th, but most of them do them on the weekends because they want to we make it available to as many people as possible. Yeah. So we're talking about going down to visit our friends in Middletown on Saturday, perhaps, if we can work that out, and seeing some fireworks with them from their favorite spot. We shall see how that works out, but it's not a done deal yet. But that's what Mike and I were talking about. So we shall see.
Cool. Well, yeah. I was really surprised that they did do fireworks in my town yesterday, because you're right. Normally they put them on the weekend.
Right. Well, what are you going to do?
Lots of noise.
Yeah, right. And if it happens that the 4th of July falls in the middle of the week on a Wednesday, well, you just deal with it, because next year it'll be on a different day, so it's okay.
That's true. Very true.
So let's see. Do we have any news? I mean, anything that we want to share, or do we get into the book, or where are we at?
Well, here's something really totally unusual.
Okay.
I can't think of anything for me to share right now.
In other words,
can you believe that?
The news today is that there's no news.
I know. I don't know if that has ever happened in my world.
It's pretty rare, I have to say, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I will say there have been things that have occurred, but nothing that I feel is appropriate to share in a public way. So I won't.
That kind of stuff always happens, yes, but we don't talk about everything in our lives. Fortunately, I don't think our listeners want to hear half of it.
I talk about most everything, but sometimes I am careful to be, somewhat private for other individuals that would prefer I don't share their news that involves me.
Understandable. Very understandable. Yeah, totally agree on that. So, well, actually, that gives us more time to talk about the book, because there have been a couple days where we haven't gotten to it at all. So this is kind of a record, getting to start working on the book from the beginning of the show. But we're reminding everybody we are on The Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham by Esther and Jerry Hicks, and we've been working on it for quite some time. We're on page 163, and the book only contains 192 pages, so we're moving through this thing pretty well. We're in the home stretch. We're in the home stretch. That's right. We're in part 5, which is about segment intending, which we've been touching on now for the last few episodes. And the current subtopic is I can prepave life or live by default, which I believe is true. But anyway, let's see what Abraham has to say about it. Abraham says, if you have not prepaved and you are not deliberately intending in this segment, then you are living life by default. And so the possibility of being swept up in the confusion or intentions of someone else is likely. Ooh. Two beings who are in two separate vehicles arriving at... This sounds like a math problem.
Get ready for the story problems. Here they come.
Word problems, oh God. Two beings who are in the two separate vehicles arriving at the same point at the same time and experiencing a collision are two beings who have not intended safety. This is true. You don't even have to understand the law of attraction for that one. They are living.
Maybe that was Abraham's way of showing their sense of humor.
That's right. Yes. They were living life by default, and they now find themselves in their confusion attracting one another, you see. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is definitely Abraham's sense of humor. So in italics, they follow this by saying, if you want and expect to receive the subject of your intent, it will be. But if you do not take the time to establish what you want, then you are attracting, by the influence of others or by the influence of your own old habits, all sorts of things that you may or may not want. We agree that there are some things that you attract accidentally or by default that you do like, just as there are some things that you attract, not intentionally, but by default, that you do not want. But there is not much satisfaction in attracting by default. The true joy of life is in deliberate creation. Kind of hard to disagree with that.
Well, and I will say, yes, I totally agree. And sometimes, often, most of the time, it's hard to know if you're creating by deliberate intent or by default. And this has actually been a question I've had on my mind the last couple of days, because I totally understand what Abraham called post-manifestational reality or, evidence. So it's like after something occurs, like in the situation of two people colliding in a car accident, you can go, oops, well, we weren't in alignment and we weren't intending this. So that's how you can know, yep, my energy was not aligned with what I prefer, because what I prefer is to go on my merry way from point A to point B without any incident. Right?
Right. That makes sense.
So it's easy to determine after the fact when you weren't aligned.
Right. Yeah, sure. Well, 2020 is always the easiest, right? That's the old cliche.
But it's like even, as a coach, I'm involved in transformational work, whether it's with my clients or myself. I'll, work on something where, I ran into a resistant speed bump, and then I've looked at it, found some thoughts that were not aligned with how I really want it to be. I've shifted things where it's like, no, what I really want is X, Y, Z. And it feels really good that I've labeled it as what I really want, but sometimes I'm not 100% certain that the old thought or belief isn't still somehow a little bit active in my vibration. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I won't really know until something, some incident, some situation, some conversation, some event shows up to show me, wow, yeah, I really did make this change, because I know, Wendy 1.0 would have had XYZ response, but this is a way better response. So I know I really cleared whatever negative belief was going on.
Okay.
But what I don't know is how to know if I'm aligned 100% of the time in advance of new situations being created. You see where I'm going with this?
I think so. I mean, maybe if you can elaborate more, but I think I see where you're going with it.
Well, I mean, the idea is Abraham saying, wow, it'd be so much better to be deliberately creating.
Mm-hmm, right.
I don't know anybody who would disagree with that.
Sure.
But what I'm looking at is, what's the marker to know you're in the space of deliberate creating versus getting what you... Okay, let me say it again. How do you really know that you've now set yourself up for manifesting what you deliberately desire versus there could be some resistant things still in your path that may yet show up?
That's true. Yeah. I might even come at the question. I think this is actually the same question, but I might come at it in a slightly different way, which is, if I am focusing on just getting myself into a really happy place and staying in that happy place as much as I can, to what degree is that deliberate creation, and to what degree is that default creation?
Well, are you talking about a happy place with something specific in mind, or just a generic happy place?
Just generically happy. Just feeling good all the time and then doing my stuff.
So to me, yes, we want to prioritize happiness, because I believe then we have increased our odds of getting the things that we desire. However, I'm talking here about something deliberate,
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have some deliberate concept or idea that you're wanting to create or see show up in your life. Like for example, let's say the car accident was me. Let's say that just happened to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have said to myself, well, that doesn't seem to be in alignment with what I thought I was in alignment with. So I go after, okay, is there something in my life or something in my beliefs where I'm focused on either lack of safety or vulnerability or unforeseen things or, things that are uncomfortable, and I go poking around for it. And let's say I find something and I go, okay, so what's the truth? And I find out what the truth is. Well, I still don't know. I mean, we're talking Wendy, life coach, transformational expert, law of attraction, doing it a long time. I still don't know 100% of the time that what's about to happen going forward will completely clear up the thing that caused the accident.
In terms of an explanation.
Not explanation, but going forward, have I cleared it up that situation won't occur again?
Have you cleared the energy? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, the energy is the thought.
Okay.
But, sometimes you could have 100 different thoughts that were a part of why something occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I undid 50 of them. How do I know that the other 50 have been done or not undone?
Yeah, I don't think you can ever really know. That's part of the whole conundrum that I've raised in the past about if we're trying to focus on one deliberate thing, but the way our day goes is we're focusing on lots of different things throughout the day, and we're changing and shifting our focus all the time. How do you draw a line between A, where you're trying to get from, and B, where you're trying to get to? And my conclusion is most of the time I can't. There's just too many threads to follow. There are too many threads to follow back. Both directions.
Well, and I'm not looking at it specifically in one day, because as we've been talking for like the last week or two, ever since we started the chapter on segment intending, Abraham made it clear that when you start to put your thoughts and energy towards something, not only is that good for that day, it's like it doesn't expire.
There's no expiration date.
You set the intention, and the momentum of that idea keeps going. On the flip side, if there's some funky, misguided thought that we have that we activated years ago, it's still hanging around too. And we don't always know it until we bump into something we don't like. And then when we go exploring it, we may find it.
Right. Yeah.
We may be able to eradicate that one thought. But, like you said, there's gazillions of thoughts that we have running around in our brain.
Yeah. The metaphor I like to think of is that it's a soup. And you put all these ingredients into the soup. The ingredients are, the various wants and desires and so forth, expressed sometimes as actual wants for the thing. Sometimes it's focusing on the lack. Then you have the default stuff where you're not really focusing on anything deliberately, but you're focusing on stuff because that's just part of living. And then there's the stuff where there's like kind of a mixture of the two, and you're sort of half default and half focusing deliberately. And then you basically put all of this into the soup, and out of that soup comes your future life. So the question becomes, how do you track that? I don't think you can track that. I mean, I talked about it in terms of threads, but even the threads become dissolved. It's like a thread goes in there, like, where'd it go? I can't tell where it went. It's like it just disappeared into the source energy. So,
like as an example, I had a conversation with my sister last week, and there was some heavy-duty stuff. She was having it, come up into her awareness, and she was like, this is really uncomfortable. Can you help me? And I said, all right, let's talk. And so we did. And like when we finished the conversation, we had definitely talked about some things where it took the old thought or belief and put it in a new light. And I remember saying, well, so now we talked about this new way of consideration for this old thing, but how much are you really believing that? I mean, is it complete for you? Like you're absolutely certain, like, wow, yeah, that old thing is just bogus, and I definitely believe this new thing. And she went, mostly. Now, as a coach, what I know is there's something that's not yet complete. But for the length of conversation we had and for all the things we talked about, it felt more appropriate to end the conversation because we had talked about a ton of stuff. And she knows I'm available to her, should she need me the next day. So the next day she calls me and she says, "Oh my gosh, I feel so good." And I said, "Regarding what we talked about yesterday?" She said, "Yes. I mean, it's like something has changed in a way that I feel really good about it. Like when I think about it, I don't have the fears and concerns that I did before. It's like, wow, like night and day difference." So of course I'm delighted for her, but
Sure.
I'm using that as an example where when we talked, she didn't have certainty. But I did say to her, I said, "Well, just keep thinking on the new things that we talked about, considering these new thoughts." And she said, "Oh, I will." And it obviously processed in a positive way for her. But it wasn't something where she could say, "Okay, I can absolutely pinpoint it was at 2:22 this morning when all of a sudden I had this dream and everything changed." I mean, there wasn't a clear-cut something where she would know, yes, I changed this. How she knew it got changed was because all of a sudden she felt overwhelmingly better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like significantly better.
Sure.
And it was on the topic that we had just talked about the day before that she was desiring to change, because she knew that she was in a place of default and manifesting by default. And we found a whole bunch of things that have, thoughts that have been lurking about for years and years and years. And we investigated them, got curious, looked at some new ways of thinking about those things, found out some of those things she was believing were obsolete. And she's like, "Yeah, I don't even believe that. Don't even know why that was still there." I don't know the specifics of which thing we eradicated and how it got flipped to a positive, but it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the
norm
kind
to
of
me.
thing where, go ahead.
That's the norm to me. That to me is normal everyday life. The exception is where someone's actually able to trace it and connect and say, "Oh, this led to that. This that I did on Tuesday led to that happened on Friday." That's rare. It's not that it can't be done. It's just it's not the common thing. Most stuff, I really don't think we can connect most of it together. We try to. We'll often say, "Oh my God, I was focusing on this and now this happened." And so we figure we've gotten a connection. And we like the idea of a clear connection. It appeals to us because it makes it easier. It's like, okay, if I can see a clear connection, I can make sense out of it. Like, yeah, I can see this is actually working. And sometimes it does seem clear to us. But nevertheless, I mean, when we were writing the stories for our book, for instance, the one that we published on Memorial Day weekend, that the stories that I contributed to it, particularly the last one that was in the book, as I'm writing that story, I mean, first of all, it was a very convoluted story anyway. There was a lot that was going on it. And secondly, I was basically, even with that convoluted stuff, I was giving the bones of it. I mean, there was day-to-day stuff going on that if I had tried to put the whole thing in there, it would have been a novel rather than a short story. Because there's nuance going on all the time. And how do you tie all the nuance together? How do you say that this nuance caused that? Often you can't. Often it's just like, this is just part of the tale of what happened. And that's about the most you can do with it. So we love the idea of having that connection that's really clear, but I think this is one thing I've really been learning. I don't expect to always see the connection. I just trust that it's there because I can't always follow it.
So I guess, and I understand where we went, and we can kind of broaden the topic that I was talking about, but I'm saying that I don't know yet, and this has been my question, so I'm hoping that there is an answer that I can ascertain. But right now, when I'm deliberately desiring something, I don't know when I can say, "Yep, I am lined up to this thing. I know I've done my prepaving, I've done my segment intending, I've done my focusing. It feels good to me. It feels like it should be on its way. Boom, it's ready to pop."
Yeah. I agree.
And then if something shows up that is a resistant piece, sometimes that comes as a surprise, like, wow, I really thought I was all set and ready to roll. I really thought this was going to pop right away, but now this showed up. That's resistant. And yes, I'll work on that piece and I'll figure out what's resistant and move it out of the way and go forward. But I don't have a way yet of knowing when there's still resistance on the trail.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm really trying to say.
Well, I think you're right. And that is really tying into what I'm saying. I mean, I understand where you see the difference. And certainly there is a difference there, because I'm kind of looking at the trail of tears, so to speak, or the trail of joy, or whatever it is, where you're trying to piece everything together, whereas you're trying to look at, here I'm getting into alignment in this particular place, and I'm expecting a certain result. How do I know I've actually gotten to an alignment? Unless, and here's the unless I can actually see, oh yes, I did get my result, so now I know I must have been in alignment. But at the time, you weren't really 100% sure.
Right.
And I get that.
Because when you got your result, again, it's post-manifestational awareness.
Yeah. Well, my
because
point
you got
is,
your result, and you go, okay, I must have been in alignment for that. Sometimes we can look at, well, I've been feeling really good, but you know what? I can be feeling really good and still have something crappy show up.
Oh, sure.
So I know my general feel good doesn't cover or make up for any resistant, errant thoughts that are rolling around in my head.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact is, we don't really know 100% whether we're in alignment. The best indicator we've got is how well are we feeling at this particular point in time. And if we're on balance, we're feeling pretty good, then we know we're pretty well in alignment. Do we know that we're perfectly in alignment? I'm not so sure that we do. I'm not sure we ever really know that. And I think it's for the same reason that I was talking about. It's the soup. We don't ever leave the soup. Yes. We're always a part of it, which means every moment of every day, not only can we not see the threads going ahead and how they work out, not only can we not see all of the threads that go behind and how they all worked out, we can't even see what's going on in the middle where we are right now. Well, I mean, so much of it we just can't separate it. There's no way to do it. So even when we're looking at our feelings, how are we feeling? Well, I feel pretty good. Do you feel better than you did yesterday when you felt pretty good? Well, I'm not sure. Too much soup. To
me, I like to work with a specific topic or specific thing. So like when I'm working with a client or when I'm doing this on myself, if I find a thought or a belief that I recognize, wow, this is not serving me. I can see that this has been the hiccup of my life where I keep bumping into this wall. This is not working.
A lot of clarity.
And then I'm able to figure out how to transmute that thought into what my inner being really thinks.
Yeah.
And when I have that, I have absolute certainty that old belief no longer exists, because when I look at it or think about it, it feels laughable. It feels obsolete. It feels like it's not true anymore. I get it. And so what I know is that positive things will begin to show up in that on that topic, because I'm deliberately working to change it. What I don't yet know is if there's anything else left over that needs to yet be addressed.
And I think you have the perfect approach for that, just to deal with that scenario, which is, as you've explained to me on numerous occasions, you don't go looking for problems. You just wait for them to emerge, and then you deal with them as they emerge. It's kind of a way of saying, I can't know what they're going to be, so I will just deal with them as they come. And that makes sense. That's actually a very good strategy.
And it has definitely worked. Where sometimes I think it trips people up is, like, I've had clients where I've done the piece of work with them, they've made a huge change, and then the next session they'll say something like, well, it didn't work because blah, blah, blah just happened. And so I'll say, okay, explain what's the specifics of what blah, blah, blah is, and they'll tell it to me. And I'll say, okay, but are you still feeling this about this? And they'll go, well, no. And so what I explain to them is, the work we did was solid. We did make that change. You made that change. But there are other threads connected to that we haven't yet addressed, and now we're getting there.
Yeah, that's true.
The reason I want to talk about this, Walt, is because, especially when somebody's new working with law of attraction, the worst thing I think someone can do is feel like, I've done all this work and I'm getting nowhere.
Yeah, I call that keeping score.
Yeah. And so if you're looking at one particular area of your life that you're really working hard to deliberately create, and you're not there yet, and you feel like, God, I've been working on this forever, it may not be that you're not getting any progress. You just haven't gotten to the finish line yet. But you could be at second base, which means you're halfway there. You've made progress.
And then just to confuse things even more, Abraham tells us you'll never get it wrong. You can't get it wrong. You'll never get it done, which means you never actually reach the finish line. There is no final finish line.
That's not how I've taken that phrase. You can never get it wrong because you never get it done, meaning we have our whole lives and then some to work on something. So if your goal is to reach home plate in a specific area, that is manageable. That is doable. That is manifestable.
It is, but you can't control exactly how it's going to happen, and you can never predict exactly when it's going to happen. That's why I like the Indian saying so well. The Indian saying from the movie The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. Everything will be all right in the end. And if it's not yet all right, it's not yet the end.
I do like that.
That's why I really believe that keeping score is actually counterproductive. I mean, I understand the value of it. I understand why people want to, because it makes you feel like you're making progress. Like, oh, wow, I did it. I got there. I got the manifestation I was looking for. I got the change in myself that produced the result. I'm making progress. I like this. I mean, I get that totally. I just also know that, boy, is it so easy to trip myself up every time I try to keep score that way.
Well, I guess it depends. I don't think of it as keeping score. I just think of it as noticing where I'm at in my progress. And
I agree. That's the better way to notice it. And when I notice it that way, now I'm no longer worried about, well, I just made this big change and now all of a sudden I got this negative result because I'm no longer keeping score.
Got it.
I mean, that's
so anyway, my big question that I have on the table right now, and I'm really looking for my inner being to show me the answer, because I'd really like to know if there's a way for me, and I'll say just for me to know when I'm really in alignment with my desire. I'd like to know that. If there's a way, I don't know that I'm aware of it yet, but if there's a way, I'll get the answer.
It's a great question. I think actually we are approaching more and more every day getting that place, getting to that place, getting to that feeling of, yeah, I know, I'm there. And I kind of think of it the same way that a mathematician thinks about what's known as a mathematical limit. And in mathematics, a limit is something you approach but you never actually reach, which is a weird concept. But it's also a useful one, because if you think of it as something that you're constantly aiming for, knowing that you're never actually going to get there, but every time that you move forward, you're getting closer and closer to this thing you'll never actually get to, it kind of helps understand and to explain what goes on in our lives as we're aiming at stuff. I make this progress, and on any given instant in time, I may or may not feel like I'm making the big progress, or I may feel like I'm making big progress a lot of the time. And when I look at the overall picture, I say, well, yeah, I'm doing really well. But on any given instant in time, I could say, well, geez, I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting the result. There are lots of different ways I can look at the same data. I guess that's what my point is. It just depends on where I am that particular day. Am I looking at it from a way that says, wow, look at all the progress I'm making? Or am I looking at it, geez, I made all this progress, but here I am running into this barrier.
I'm silent only because I'm really thinking about what you're saying.
Well, good. I mean, that means I said something profound. Let me know if I did. I mean, it's a rarity. I like to keep, that's one thing I like to keep score. Hey, I got something profound. This is good.
Well, and I love exploration of the ideas, because my life would be very boring if all I did is knew the answers and I regurgitated them. I'm always in the process of learning more and asking questions and wanting to know more, so.
I really do think, though, that you've demonstrated to me very clearly over the last 6 months or so that we've been doing the show together that you have made tremendous strides in terms of communicating with your inner being, or as I'm liking calling it now, the rest of me. That's what I like calling my inner being.
Oh.
But you made a lot of progress there to the point where you're practically having conversations. I'm still learning the alphabet, and here you are having full conversations with your inner being, and I'm feeling jealous about it. But nevertheless, as you have developed in this way, it has shown me kind of from like a third-person viewpoint just how, as you make that progress as you develop that way, you are refining that skill. You're refining that communication to the point where, I mean, early on, it could be days before you get an answer on a question you put out. Now you can get a question off and right at the tip of your tongue just as you're asking the question. Not always, but often. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really good. Well, I see.
One of the ways I saw law of attraction show up for me today was, I don't know if it was last night or this morning, but I was thinking about marketing.
Okay.
And, how to market a business in a way that is highly successful, that you really get new clients in the door. And so I just kind of threw it out to my inner being and I said, hey, I really want to know more about marketing. I don't know if I want to study it, take courses in it, or have information put in front of me. But it's like I'm really at a point that I really desire to kind of jump into the concept of marketing in a bigger way. And so I just kind of said, would you throw something over the wall for me to kind of get it rolling? And so anyway, I, went to work. I'm in my inbox, and my current day job email address is the email address I have connected with my LinkedIn account.
Okay.
And so I get LinkedIn emails at work. And there was something in there that said, I had a message. So I go and I look, and it was a message all about marketing. And, hey, Wendy, if you're interested in knowing more about how to market yourself, you may want to subscribe to our newsletter. And here are all the different kind of marketing things that we talk about. And I went, wow, that was fast. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's the totality of the answer, but it just was lovely to see how law of attraction responded to me so quickly. And I looked at it and I just asked my inner being, like, would this be a benefit to me? And I got a yes. And I went, okay. So I subscribed. And then it said, do you want to receive something every day, or do you want the weekly digest? And I said, hey, inner being, what would be better for me? And I got weekly. I went, okie dokie. So I signed up. And so I don't know if I have to wait a week now to get the next something, but I love to see how law of attraction is so responsive. That was just really awesome evidence. And I pointed out because I think sometimes we don't make a big deal about how, I had a deliberate thought and I got an immediate response.
Yeah, it's true.
And if I just let it go without acknowledgement, not that law of attraction is going to stop working with me, but it kind of, it makes the many efforts of Wendy feel like it's just a lot of effort and not without, some kind of evidence that I'm getting payback. And I am getting payback. I think a thought, I get a response. I think a thought, I get a response. And I think the old me used to think a thought and get a response, and I didn't know it.
Oh, yeah, it's probably true. I
didn't
think it's
even know how to. Yeah, I didn't even know how to notice it.
Yeah, right.
So
I know that one.
I know that I made a point at one point in my journey saying, okay, I'm going to really do a better job of paying attention to what shows up in my life, especially after I've just asked for something, instead of ask for something and then forget about it. Mm-hmm. It's the forgetting about it meant I forgot about it. So when it showed up, I'd already forgotten about it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, it seems to me sometimes that we have law of attraction amnesia, or perhaps law of attraction Alzheimer's. I'm not really sure what. But the point is, we put out a request and then we forgot we put it out. And then a few days later it shows up and we don't make the connection.
Exactly. And I think, I'm not the only one who's done that. I know you're not the only one who's done that. So, it's worth having discussed it to make it a point to say, hey, anybody who's listening, if you're doing that too, don't just set it and forget it. Set it and say, and now I'm going to be aware. I'm going to be looking for it to show up. And it will.
I think I'll probably have to do more of that, because one of the experiences I've had is having that, we've used this technical term before, the niggly feeling, that little niggly feeling. Did I anticipate this? Did I put something out about this? This this feels so familiar. But I can't put the connection on.
I like niggly feelings.
You like niggly? Yeah, it's one of those things that's just, I don't know. I guess what I'm thinking is the more that I learn about this law of attraction stuff, and the more I learn about this other, rest of my being and connecting to it and so forth. It sounds so simple. It sounds like it should be so simple. And my God, the complexity just keeps growing the more I look at it.
Walt, I wonder if we had been given this information, like when we were 3 years old, when we started becoming verbal, or 2 years old, or one, it doesn't matter. If we were given this information when we were really little, would this complicated thing seem even less complicated? Would it feel like this is just the way you live? Is it because we lived multiple decades of our lives before we latched onto this understanding? And part of our process is undoing all the crap that we learned that was inappropriate or didn't serve us.
Well, it might not be the case where it would be difficult to handle. It might have been just something we would have absorbed and used easily.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you our parents would have felt that all of us were precocious and wouldn't have known what to do with any of us because we're all coming up with all this crazy stuff. Like, what the hell is he talking about?
Well, because if you think about, technology, computers was developed in our lifetime. And that was something that you and I had to adjust to. Now, we did. We like it. But those who are significantly younger, that's all they've ever known.
True.
All they've ever, even preschool, not preschool, play school, the toy company, they have so many digital products that a child of 3 is playing with digital technology, and that's considered their toy. Where, I remember giving as gifts Speak and Spell, where you pull the string and it says, "The farmer says this is a cow," or something like that. That was about as, high tech as we got at the time.
Well, so I'll tell you something that'll blow your mind a little bit. The processor, the microprocessor, and the memory that's in those toys that you're talking about today, there is more microprocessing power and more memory in those toys than there was in what powered the entire Apollo 8 mission.
Holy cow! I'll take your word for it.
It's crazy. It's just insane.
Well, and so, my point is, if you learn law of attraction, if you learn anything when you're young, it doesn't feel difficult or complex.
True.
It just feels like it's just what is. But when we learn something long time after we've already learned another way of living, now we're like asking ourselves to kind of start from scratch when we're in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why sometimes it feels so complex, because I don't know that it needs to be, except we know two sets of things. We know what was, and now we're learning what is. Where someone who's brand new to this world life experience only knows what is.
Well, I'm thinking maybe, we've been talking quite a bit about the timing of the thing and so forth. We haven't really gotten a whole lot into the feeling part, and the next section of the book is about the feeling part. I'm thinking, why don't we look at that? Okay. Maybe that's going to give us some more ideas.
All right, go for it.
So the next topic is, as I am feeling, I am attracting. And it says, now, this is the key to your deliberate creating. See yourself as this magnet, attracting unto you the way you feel at any point in time. When you feel clear and in control, you will attract circumstances of clarity. When you feel happy, you will attract circumstances of happiness. When you feel healthy, you will attract circumstances of health. And when you feel prosperous, you will attract circumstances of prosperity. When you feel loved, you will attract circumstances of love. Literally, the way you feel is your point of attraction, and so the value of segment intending here is that you pause many times during your day to say, this is what I want from this segment of my life experience. I want it, and I expect it, and as you set forth those powerful words, you become what we call a selective sifter, and you attract into your experience what you want. You see, the universe, indeed the very world in which you live, is filled with all sorts of things. And there are things that you like very much, just as there are things that you do not like very much. But all that comes into your experience only by your invitation through thought. And so if you are taking the time, many times in a day, to identify what you want and setting forth your statement of desire and expectation, you will gain the magnetic control of your own experience. No more will you be the victim. There is not really such a thing. And no more will you be the indeliberate attractor or the default attractor. Once you begin to segment your day to identify many times in the day what it is you do want, now you are a deliberate attractor, and that is a joyful experience. That's pretty much the standard pitch on segment intending. I like that first part, though, and it does kind of tie it in. When you feel clear and in control, you will attract circumstances of clarity. When you feel happy, you will attract circumstances of happiness. When you feel healthy, you will attract circumstances of health. It's actually a very broad way of saying it. It's not like saying you're going to get that one particular healthy thing that you want, or that one particular happy thing you want, or that one particular prosperous thing you wanted. You're just going to experience circumstances. And circumstances, that's a fairly broad concept.
So that whole paragraph or section caused a new question to bubble up inside of me.
What a shock. It happens all the time.
Which is, so maybe what they're saying is when you're deliberate about prepaving and or segment intending in any given time period. Mm-hmm. So like, let's just say, we weren't on this call and I decided, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be in a new segment.
Okay.
And I plan what I want and I feel really good about it. Because in any given moment, what you focus on is your point of attraction. I'm wondering if that's saying you are now going to draw positive things to you in the next 10 minutes or so, because that's where you have pointed your deliberate rudder, so to speak. And maybe what I hadn't picked up on before was that this is about being present in this moment, deliberately deciding what you want right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because what I really was talking about when we read the first section, I was kind of looking at the wholeness of life. I wasn't looking at one specific now moment.
Yeah, sure.
I was just kind of, and I think what I didn't realize is I'm talking about default moments. In other words, if I wasn't segment intending, if I wasn't pointing my attention on something specific right now, and I was just moving from one thing to another, maybe that's where we're open to the defaultness of whatever active energies we may have within us, because we're not focusing our rudder in that given moment. What does that sound like to you?
I think it's a nice way of slicing and dicing my concept that life is a soup. I mean, there are times when we're focusing carefully with the rudder, and other times we're distracted by conversation, and there are times we're starting to focus, and then we're doing this as we go back to the focus. I mean, none of us, I don't know of one person I've ever met who has monofocus. They focus on one thing and one thing only, and they ignore everything else. I don't know anyone who can do that. I have seen prodigies or watched videos of prodigies, but even the prodigies can get distracted. I have never met a person who is never, ever, ever distracted from one thing, even by themselves. And that's what complicates it, in my view. The simple fact is we are not mono-focusers. We focus on lots of things, and we keep shifting our focus. So trying to measure all that and trying to figure, okay, well, I'm focusing on this thing. I expect this result. I expect this to happen. I mean, yeah, the best you can really do with that is what's happening in this moment, what's the result that you're getting, and kind of make adjustments on that. I don't see any way to make it a perfect alignment, though, that always produces the result that you want, because we're focusing and constantly changing directions. How do you measure that?
I do agree with that. And the piece that I guess I didn't quite pick up until you read this last section was, I believe Abraham is saying, become deliberate in the now as often as you can.
Yeah.
Take control of the now and think about what you want. And I think the more you do that, the more you get positive results in whatever subject areas we're choosing to focus on the now. So if right now I'm about to make dinner. So if I know that my segment that I'm about to go into is making dinner and I don't have any groceries ready for it, I might segment intend, okay, let me come up with a creative thing to make tonight, something that, even if I need to go to the grocery store, I can get in and out of the store in an easy peasy kind of way, that the line at the grocery store will be like, they'll open it up just for me and there'll be nobody in front of me. And I'll just go through and it'll feel really lovely. And then when I come home, I'll be in a really happy, creative space where I'm going to want to cook and slice and dice my vegetables and da 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 da. And if I take the moment to like be present now, to plan for what's going to happen, I would say dinner might be a segment that could take an hour and a half or 2 hours. I could see that if I did that on a regular basis regarding meal planning, then over time, not that I never want to segment intend again, but that I will be setting the energy around meal planning to go in a really smooth, comfortable way.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that while I'm at the grocery store, I won't be thinking about my job, or I won't be thinking about, I need to call Rhonda. It doesn't mean I won't be distracted and I won't be thinking about other things, because that's what you were referring to, is how we're kind of in the soup and we're always distracted and there's so many thoughts that we think.
Right.
But the specificity around the meal planning that I'm focusing on right now is where I'm going to see things go in a smooth way.
And the key word there, I think, is smooth, because smooth is an expression of preference. It's an expression of this feels good. Smooth is actually not a way of describing, well, I put together this whole scenario, which you just beautifully laid out, of this is what's going to happen, and now every single step along the way is happening the way I pre-planned it. Rather, it's that regardless of whether it went exactly the way I pre-planned it, it went smoothly. It went so easily. And wow, that felt so good. That
there was synchronicity, that like the manager decided to open up the checkout line just as I was coming up. And are you ready to check out, ma'am? I'll say, yes, I am. Well, here, you can move on to line 7. The checker is standing there waiting for you. I can't control all those things, but if I'm looking for smoothness or synchronicity, or just I'm planning, I'm just saying, this is what I desire. I desired this to be, fun. Or maybe I want a social event while I go to the grocery store. Hey, while I'm there, I would love to run into people who just want to have quick conversations, things that will light me up and cause me to feel good. Whatever it is that I want, I can set. But I guess overall what I'm seeing is, and I think it was lost on me until now, is paying attention to the now.
Mm-hmm.
This is more than just deliberate creation for the future, like on my project X, my career. That's a deliberate creation I'm in process working on. But I don't see that that's really, not that you couldn't use segment intending to work on maybe a project within my project X, but segment intending, I'm now understanding, is for right now in the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I really didn't see that before.
And one way I can point to that is, you described going to the store. I'm going to give an alternative version of going to the store. So right. I'm going to visualize this, right? So I'm visualizing, I'm getting into my car. Well, first I'm putting the keys into my pocket, getting my wallet, and then I'm turning and walking out the door, locking the door as I go, and then I go over to the car. I climb into the car after unlocking it, check my settings, check my mirrors, turn on the ignition, and realize, boy, it's hot. I turn on the air conditioner. I pull out of the parking lot and head down to the traffic light, where I wait for a total of 23 seconds for the light to change. I take the right. As I take the right, I notice that there's traffic coming up that's not waiting for the light, so I have to slow and make sure I'm actually going to get out into traffic. I mean, I could do that whole thing like that. And then when I actually do the trip, I didn't have a problem with the AC, because the AC actually cooled up very, very quickly, and there was no waiting at the light because it turned green before I even got there, and I just went right through, and all these things, worked out not the way I visualized it. And yet it was a smooth result. Do I complain? No. But it didn't come out the way I visualized it. Who cares? You got the result you wanted. You got to the store. You got there easily. You checked out. It was great. Who cares if you didn't wait 73 seconds at the traffic light? It doesn't matter.
So the way the law of attraction is going to respond to the scenario that you just prepaved was not based on the specific words that you said, but based on the feelings that you felt while you were saying those specific words.
Exactly, yeah. Which is a difference. And it's an important difference.
Yeah, and that I think sometimes people get tripped up there going, see, well, I didn't get what I really set out to get because I said I wanted blah, blah, blah. But if your blah, blah, blah had a certain feeling associated with it, the question is, when you got the result, did you feel that same way? And if the answer is yes, okay, then you did get the result that you were looking for.
Right.
Because law of attraction doesn't know our words. They don't hear our words. They're not, law of attraction is not listening. Law of attraction's feeling.
And delivered the result, even though it matched very little of what you pre-planned when you did a very detailed micromanaged pre-planning. You actually missed most of it, but you still got the result.
Well, but you got it all.
Yeah, you did.
Based on the feeling.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay attention to law of attraction responds to our feelings. It matches feelings. It doesn't match words.
So I raised the question, how often in life do we try to intend, we try to deliberately create, and then it doesn't create just the way we had in mind, or creates with a different result than we had in mind. And before we get anywhere further along the path, we say, this stuff doesn't work. All because we're trying to micromanage how that's going to happen, when actually the universe does a whole lot better job than we do.
Well, a phrase that me and most of my coaching friends use on a regular basis is, it never shows up the way you think.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It never shows up the way you plan.
Yeah.
It almost always shows up way better.
Yeah.
But it shows up in a way that feels joyful. It feels like, wow, this was awesome. It definitely created the feeling that we were looking for. But I know one of the conversations I've been having with some of my friends has been about how we do try to micromanage. Even when we're trying to say, hey, universe, let's do this deliberate creation thing. Here's what I want. Instead of going, here's how I want to feel. Or this is something that XYZ needs to be accomplished. And I'd like to feel really great in the process while accomplishing it. I would like to have a level of synchronicity and smoothness where creative ideas are just popping in left, right, and all over as I'm doing this. And then when we're done, I want to get excited because I got exactly what I wanted and then some.
For me, the classic example is what I see a lot on Facebook of somebody who says, I want to attract this one particular person into my life. Not just anybody, but it's got to be this particular person who previously abused me and didn't treat me well, but I know that he and I are really perfect for each other. And, so I'm putting out there, I want this person to call me. Yes, he blew me off yesterday, but he's going to call me, he's going to text me, and we're going to reconnect, and everything's going to be so beautiful when that happens. And then the next day the post is, he showed up, he connected, but it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. He started treating me nasty. It's like, I didn't even want to be in the same room with him. Meanwhile, she completely ignores the fact that besides sending that guy, the universe also sent 4 other guys to him who were absolutely dishy, but because it wasn't the one guy, she just ignored them entirely. Didn't even include them in the story.
Right. Yeah, because we can't connect to that which we're not aligned to.
Exactly.
If we only want Bobby, and Bobby's the only person I've got my eyes set on, then when Bill, Peter, David, and Brian show up and they're all quite nice to me and they're all interested, I won't see them.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's not even that they're interested. They could be potential interested individuals, but wherever I go that I could meet them, my eyes will move in a different direction. I won't see them.
Yeah.
I know that, my ex-husband and I, once we were dating, we talked about different places that we'd been. And we're like, surely we have crossed paths with each other in the same city, at the same grocery stores, and we talk about how we would not have matched many years ago before we actually met. Mm-hmm. And so even if we were we could be in line at Walmart and he could be directly behind me and I could see him and not see him.
Sure.
I could see him and not be attracted to him. He could see me and not be attracted to me. Or we could be, like my cell phone rings when we would have the opportunity to actually have a conversation, but we would not connect because law of attraction will make certain we don't connect.
That's right.
Because you have to be a match. And, for anybody who's looking for that special someone and they think they know who that special someone is, and they've abused them, like the scenario that you're talking about, if you go more general, instead of I have to have this specific person, and go more general to what was it about that person that when you did feel good with them, that you want to feel again.
Now, here's a really radical concept to go along with what you're describing, because what you're describing is beautiful. I'll take it a step further and say, when we are trying to micromanage, what we're really doing is demonstrating that we're addicted.
Or we're demonstrating we don't trust the law of attraction to match us up with what we really desire.
Well, yeah, I think it's fair to say that someone who's addicted does not trust the law of attraction at all.
Right.
That's almost always true as far as I know.
Well, and trusting law of attraction may not be something that somebody's comfortable doing.
Yeah,
but
sure.
If you put it in someone else's language, like if they have a strong faith in God, it's saying you're not trusting the God of your faith.
Same concept.
To bring to you the person that will make you truly happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trust is a big issue.
Gigantic.
For me, I'm comfortable saying, do I trust law of attraction? Do I trust my inner being? Because those are entities that I work with quite often. But for a while, I'm like, why am I trusting something that doesn't feel very personal? Because like when I was a Christian, the concept of God was a very personal concept to me. And so it felt good to rely on God, but I recognized I wasn't trusting God in certain circumstances. Now that I am who I am, believing the beliefs that I have, my inner being and me are pretty tight. I recognize my inner being is not just some weirdo entity that's out there. It's me. My inner being is the part of me that has remained in the non-physical realm. Yeah. It's me. And it's like saying I don't trust me, but it took me time to trust me.
Well, that's why I call it the rest of me. That's why I'm liking that better than my inner being, because if I say that it's the rest of me, it becomes really difficult to tell myself I don't really trust that. I don't really believe that. It's just the rest of me.
It's like saying I don't trust me.
I don't trust me.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's a big reason why I get a lot of coaching clients.
That's true.
Don't trust themselves.
Yeah, that's why a lot of us are studying this stuff to the great degree we are, because even those of us who really, really have learned it pretty well, we still find ourselves tripping ourselves up. Well, it's useful to know that one of the reasons we trip ourselves up is that we micromanage ourselves without even realizing it at times.
And the reason we micromanage is because we feel if we don't control it, it won't get done the way we want it to get done.
And I wonder if that ties into what the question was that you raised earlier. You raised the question, how do I know if I'm in alignment? Maybe that's one of the clues. You see what I mean?
Together for me?
Well, maybe one of the clues is I have a tendency to micromanage. If I can understand where those tendencies show up, I perhaps have just found a way to anticipate what some of those hidden resistances are that I wasn't aware of before. And that will help me to understand truly whether I'm in alignment in any given situation, or at least to understand it better than I did before I explored that. Does that make sense?
Not quite for me.
Oh.
But I didn't connect with that idea.
I kind of jumped around, I guess. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. I know we only have about a minute of the show left.
Minute and a quarter, yeah. So we'll probably have to save that one. But I still do believe that might be a clue. A clue to how do you figure out whether or not you're truly in alignment. And the clue is to look at what ways do I know of already that I am currently a micromanager that I need to unlearn. That will probably tell me what are the ways that I am also currently not in alignment when I think I'm in alignment. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
You just stick to that and you do some research on it and get back to it.
I will get back to you, I promise. Just as long as you promise to join me again tomorrow. Is that okay?
I will do that.
All right. And we will we will also ask you to join us tomorrow next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.